Let me start with Ashraf. This man of the pen played a crucial role in both the economy and politics of Palestine. Part of their influence derived from the fact that Islam traditionally refused to recognize, at least in theory, a division between the temporal and spiritual realms of existence, that is between the early pursuit of gain and the preparation of one's soul for the hereafter. Another factor was that Ottomans, unlike the earlier dynasties such as the Umayyads and the Abbasids, which rules the Muslim world after the initial Islamic conquest, were never fully recognized by the Muslim world as the rightful heirs of the first caliphs. Hence the use of term sultan rather than caliphs to describe the Ottoman rulers, the former term expressing merely his de facto control of the realm rather than a lawful right to succession. Throughout the long centuries of the rule from Istanbul, the general populace in Palestine, as elsewhere in the Arab world, continued to give formal obeisance to the secular authorities while reserving its true allegiance for the upholders of Quran and of the indivisible unity of faithful, namely the Ashraf. Members of Ashraf, which is named singularly Sharif, were distinguished by birth. Most traced their ancestry to or claimed to be descended from either Prophet Muhammad or the great military commanders who had led the early Islamic conquest in the 7th century AD. As such, they enjoyed some certain privileges. They paid no taxes and were exempt from military service, as well as from persecution under the criminal law. They could be tried only by their leader, the Nakib, and if necessary were imprisoned in the Nakib's house rather than in state prisons. Their material wealth was derived from their control of the Afkaf, singularly Waf, the charitable estates and foundations set up in perpetuity in Islamic law. The Tamimims, for example, had been given Waf and other huge tracts of fertile land in Palestine by Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph in the 7th century at the time of Islamic conquest. Another family, the Daudis of Jerusalem, later known as the Tajani, were entrusted with the control of the Waf of the Nabi Dawood about the same time, while a portion of revenues derived from Waf land was joined for the upkeep of mosques, schools and public gardens, as well as the distribution to poor. Revenues obtained from immovable property built on Waf land, which is called Virku, or from the titles payable on its agricultural produce were generally kept by the Ashraf to defray the expenses they incurred in the course of their duties. The insecurity and disorder which occurred during the Civil War led to a considerable increase in the amount of land registered as swap, and so to an increase in the lands and properly available to the Ashraf and their allies. The conversion of land to Afghaf ensured that it could not be confiscated by Ottoman authorities for the lack of cultivation or for failure to pay the tribute demanded by the Sultan's military governance. Equally important were the Tanzimat reforms and centralization of authority under Sultan Abdul Hamid II, which, however oppressive, nevertheless provided new means by which the Ashraf could exploit their holdings and expand their wealth and influence. This occurred in several ways. First of all, the new schools and governmental departments were staffed by the sons of the Sharifian families and by the sons of the landed families whose education and qualifications had been certified by the Ashraf. By recruiting civil servants and army officers from amongst their kin or related families, the Ashraf were effectively able to monopolize the advancement and promotion of Palestinians within the Ottoman administration. Second, in fact, the fact that holding of religious offices within the empire became hereditary in the latter part of Ottoman rule meant that certain of the Ashraf were able to not only to dominate the religious hierarchy, but also ensure that the control of the Afghaf remained within their own households. Third, the restoration of order and expansion of cultivation which occurred under Sultan Abdul Hamid increased the revenues from Afghaf and so to that of the Ashraf. This enabled the Ashraf and their allies to purchase uncultivated land which they could often obtain at an unusually low price as well. Through their position in the Ottoman bureaucracy and their access to the court, the judges or qadi who adjudicated disputes concerning the ownership and cultivation of land were, as we have seen, drawn from the ranks of the Ashraf. Fourth, the changes in the manner in which the harvest was assessed and in the amount due in payment of the tithes enabled them to obtain a larger amount of produce in advance of the harvest from their own holdings and that of the Afghaf. With these payments in kind, they were able to engage in trade and to amass wealth both by providing an outlet for the agricultural surplus and the money needed by the peasantry to finance the next year's crop. Last but not least, many of the Ashraf, after the changes in the land law, were often able to sizable estates by the simple tactic of registering the land communally cultivated by the peasantry as their own. The peasantry, which was already overburdened with debt, was often left with no choice. registration in the name of sheriff was the only way which a peasant could escape the high taxes implemented by Ottoman Empire at that time. After the young Turks began forcibly to conscript a large number of the peasantry into the army, even more land registered in the name of Ashraf or of the local sheikh. In addition to relieving the peasant of the crushing burden of taxes such as a move, also enabled him to ensure that his sons would not be registered for military service.